Chapter 1. The Shadow Detective. The rain poured heavily over the city, as if the sky were weeping its sorrows. Through the dark, wet streets, the sound of footsteps echoed, each step a heartbeat in the city's pulse. Through the half-open blinds, a faint light escaped from an office on the third floor of a dilapidated building. Inside, seated behind a solid wooden desk, was the detective who knew every dark corner of that metropolis. His name was Jack Sullivan. Around 40 years old, his face was marked by scars from past battles and a weariness that only life on the front lines could cause. He had dark brown, disheveled hair and green-gray eyes that seemed to see through lies and illusions. The fedora hat, carelessly tossed on the desk, and the cigarette burning between his fingers were his trademarks. Jack's office was an extension of his own soul, dark, filled with memories and secrets. Piles of old files, empty whiskey bottles, and photos of solved cases were scattered everywhere. The lighting came from an old lamp, casting dancing shadows on the walls covered with newspapers and maps. He stared at the window, watching the rain, lost in thought. There was something hypnotic about those incessant drops. They reminded him of the constant battle against the darkness he faced, an endless struggle to bring some light to the city's lost souls. However, Jack was not just an ordinary detective. He had a unique talent for solving cases that defied logic. In the past, he had unraveled seemingly impossible murders, found missing people without a trace, and uncovered secrets many preferred to leave buried. A soft knock on the door brought Jack back to reality. He stubbed out his cigarette in the full ashtray and adjusted himself in the chair. "Come in," he said, his deep, hoarse voice echoing in the office's silence. The door opened slowly, revealing a hooded figure. The man, with a serious expression and eyes that conveyed a mix of desperation and hope, approached Jack's desk. He hesitated for a moment, as if considering the gravity of what he was about to say. "Mr. Sullivan," the man began, his voice low and trembling, "I need your help. It's a case unlike any other, something that defies human understanding." Jack raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "Go on." "The old mansion on the hill. People are disappearing there. There's no logical explanation. And they say there's something supernatural involved." A heavy silence hung in the air. Jack watched the man intently, analyzing every nuance of his behavior. It was evident he was terrified. "Superstition and fear are common currencies in this city," Jack said, his voice now softer, almost a whisper. "But I'm listening. Tell me everything." The man took a deep breath before starting to recount the mansion's story, describing the inexplicable disappearances and the dark rumors surrounding the place. As he listened, Jack felt a familiar electricity in the air. This case had all the elements to be one of the most challenging and intriguing of his career. When the man finished, Jack lit another cigarette, reflecting on what he had heard. "I'll take the case," he said, finally, with a determined gleam in his eyes. "But I must warn you, when you meddle with the unknown, there are no guarantees, only answers that may not be pleasing." The man nodded, relieved. "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I knew I could count on you." Jack escorted him to the door, sensing that something big was about to begin, something that could change his life forever. He returned to his desk, grabbed his hat, and looked at the coat hanging on the chair. "Well," he murmured to himself, "let's see what the night has to offer." And so, Jack Sullivan prepared to dive into yet another mystery, where the line between reality and the supernatural was about to become dangerously thin. Chapter 2. The Shadow Enigma. The next morning arrived shrouded in mist, as if the city were trying to hide its darkest secrets. Jack Sullivan, after a restless night's sleep, was back in his office. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, an attempt to clear his mind for what was to come. As Jack reviewed the scant information his mysterious client had given him, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. The door creaked open, and a figure entered, wrapped in a heavy coat, raindrops still falling from its brim. It was a woman, her eyes filled with an urgency that immediately captured Jack's attention. "Mr. Sullivan, you have to help," she said, her voice trembling. "My name is Clara Hayes. It's about the same case you were told about yesterday. The mansion on the hill." Jack stood up, gesturing for her to sit. "Tell me everything, Miss Hayes." Clara settled into the chair in front of Jack's desk, her trembling hands clutching a leather bag. "My sister disappeared 3 days ago. She worked as a nurse and suddenly vanished. The last time I saw her, she was heading to the mansion. She was fascinated by that place, by its dark history." Jack lit a cigarette, offering one to Clara, who declined with a shake of her head. "What's so special about that mansion?" Clara took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. The mansion belonged to a wealthy family in the last century. They say horrible things happened there. People disappeared, unexplained deaths, and there are rumors that the place is haunted. My sister believed there was a connection between the current disappearances and the mansion's dark past. Jack blew out the smoke, his eyes never leaving Clara's. "You mentioned she was fascinated. What exactly was she hoping to find there?" "She was an amateur paranormal investigator," Clara replied, her words now more controlled. "She believed she could find proof of life after death or something like that. But now, I fear the worst." Jack was silent for a moment, processing the information. "And what about the previous disappearances? What else do you know about them?" Clara opened her bag and pulled out a thick envelope, handing it to Jack. "Here are newspaper clippings, notes, and letters. Everything my sister gathered about the mansion. I thought it might help." Jack took the envelope and began to leaf through the documents. Old photos of the mansion, newspaper headlines about disappearances, and handwritten notes. Each detail seemed more sinister than the last. "I'll need to visit this place," Jack said finally, closing the envelope. "But you need to understand, Clara, that what I might find could be beyond what we can rationally explain." Clara nodded, her determination evident. "I know. I just want my sister back." Jack stood up, grabbing his coat and hat. "Let's start now. The sooner we get there, the sooner we can discover what's happening." The two left the office, and as they walked through the misty streets, Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The mansion on the hill awaited, and with it, the secrets that could change everything. When they arrived at the mansion, the place was surrounded by an aura of abandonment and despair. The windows were broken, the doors creaked at the slightest touch of the wind, and vegetation grew wild around it, as if trying to hide the scars of the past. Jack and Clara stopped in front of the main door. "Here we are," Jack said, his voice low and steady. "Let's see what the mansion has to tell us." Chapter 3. The Mansion on the Hill. The mansion loomed before them like a monument to the past, its stone walls covered in moss and time leaving deep marks on its structure. Jack Sullivan and Clara Hayes stood at the entrance, the aura of desolation and mystery enveloping the place, like an invisible cloak. The wind blew gently, bringing whispers of untold stories. Jack pushed the main door, which opened with a prolonged groan, as if protesting the intrusion. The interior was shrouded in shadows, with daylight struggling to penetrate through the dirty, broken windows. The floor creaked under their feet, and the smell of mold and decay was almost palpable. "This place," Clara murmured, looking around with wide eyes. "It's even scarier than I imagined." Jack lit a flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness and revealing the mansion's decaying grandeur. The entry hall was vast, with a solid wooden staircase leading to the upper floors. Old portraits, with faces that seemed to follow visitors with their eyes, adorned the walls. "We'll start down here," said Jack, advancing cautiously. "Look for anything that seems out of the ordinary." They began searching every corner, opening doors and drawers, looking for clues. In a sitting room, Jack found an old diary, its pages yellowed and fragile. He sat in a dusty armchair and began to read aloud. November 12th, 1898. Something strange is happening in this house. I hear voices at night, whispers I can't understand. The servants are scared, saying they've seen shadows moving along the walls. Clara approached, listening intently. Could this diary belong to the original owner? Possibly, Jack replied, turning another page. There's more here. Descriptions of inexplicable events, disappearances of servants. It seems the problems in this place started a long time ago. As Jack read, Clara continued to explore the room. Her eyes were drawn to a fireplace, where a small object glinted among the ashes. Carefully she picked it up, an old locket, with a strange symbol engraved on it. "Jack, look at this," she called, handing him the locket. "It seems important." Jack examined the locket, recognizing the symbol as a mystical sigil. This isn't just a trinket. It might be part of what's causing the phenomena here. They continued to explore, each room revealing more of the mansion's dark past. In an upstairs bedroom, they found a mural painted on the wall, depicting figures engulfed in flames, as if consumed by an invisible force. The painting was disturbing, conveying a sense of despair and agony. Suddenly, a sound echoed down the hallway. Jack raised the flashlight, his senses on high alert. "Did you hear that?" Clara nodded, her eyes filled with fear. "It sounds like it's coming from the attic." Without hesitation, they climbed the stairs leading to the attic, the wood creaking under their feet. The air up there was heavy and dense, as if carrying centuries of secrets. When they opened the attic door, they were greeted by a disturbing sight. Walls covered in strange symbols, drawn with a dark substance that looked like blood. In the center of the room, a circle of extinguished candles, and in the middle, a sinister-looking doll, dressed like a child, from another era. "This place is an altar," Jack said, feeling a chill. "Someone performed rituals here." As they examined the attic, Clara noticed something on the floor, a small crack in the wood, like a hidden door. "Jack, over here." They opened the hidden door, revealing a narrow staircase leading down to a concealed basement. The darkness below seemed denser, more oppressive. "Let's go," Jack said, descending the stairs with Clara close behind. The basement was even darker, with stone walls and dampness that echoed with every step. At the bottom of the basement, they found a table covered with old torture instruments and books on the occult. Jack picked up one of the books, flipping through its pages filled with symbols and macabre rituals. "This place, it's a gateway to something much more sinister than we imagined," he said, closing the book. "We need to find out who or what is behind this." The mansion had begun to reveal its secrets, but the answers only brought more questions, and Jack knew they were just at the beginning of a journey that would take them deeper into the mystery. Chapter 4. The First Supernatural Encounter. The mansion's basement was a chamber of horrors. The old stone walls seemed slick with humidity, and the moldy smell was suffocating. Jack Sullivan and Clara Hayes rummaged through the remnants of dark rituals, their steps echoing heavily in the cramped space. Jack felt a presence, something that couldn't be explained by logic. The air seemed to vibrate with an invisible energy. He opened one of the occult books found on the table, reading aloud a passage, written in Latin. "Animus ad inferos vocatus est," he murmured, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Suddenly, an icy chill invaded the room. Clara hugged herself, shivering. "Jack, do you feel that?" Before he could respond, a ghostly light began to emanate from the floor. Nebulous forms appeared, dancing in the air. They were indistinct figures, but their eyes glowed with a supernatural intensity. Jack pulled Clara back, shielding her with his own body. "They are lost souls," he said, his voice tense, "prisoners of this place." The figures floated around them, their whispers filling the air. incomprehensible words, full of despair and pain. Clara looked at Jack, her eyes filled with fear and curiosity. "What do they want?" "They want to be freed," Jack replied, still watching the shapes. "And maybe to warn us about something." Suddenly, one of the forms materialized more clearly. It was a woman, her eyes fixed on Jack, as if recognizing in him a chance of salvation. "Help us," she whispered, her voice echoing in Jack's mind. The room began to shake, as if the mansion itself were reacting to the presence of the spirits. Jack held Clara firmly, trying to keep his balance. "We need to get out of here," he shouted, pulling her towards the stairs. As they ran out of the basement, the spectral lights continued to chase them. Jack could feel the despair of the souls, their invisible hands trying to grab them, begging for release. They hurried up the stairs, the sound of their steps echoing like a beating drum. Upon emerging from the basement, Jack slammed the door behind them, temporarily sealing the entities inside. Panting, he looked at Clara, who was pale and trembling. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she replied, still in shock. "But what was that? What happened down there?" "They were trapped souls," Jack said, trying to process what they had just experienced. "People who died here, possibly as a result of the rituals. They are stuck between this world and the next." Clara looked at Jack, her eyes full of determination. "We need to free them and find out what's causing all this." Jack nodded. "I agree. But first, we need to understand more about these rituals. What was done here, and by whom?" As they spoke, a shadow moved silently down the hallway. Jack noticed something out of the corner of his eye, turning quickly, but saw nothing. "Stay alert," he warned. "We're not alone here." Exploring the upper floor, they found more abandoned rooms, each bearing its own weight of history and pain. In one of the rooms, a broken window let in a cold wind that made the curtains flutter like dancing specters. Suddenly, a low, guttural laugh echoed down the hallway. Clara grabbed Jack's arm, her eyes wide. "What was that?" Jack squinted, trying to locate the source of the sound. "Something, or someone, is toying with us." The laughter grew louder, closer. Jack pulled Clara into a corner, trying to use the shadows to their advantage. He felt a chill run down his spine, a premonition that something terrible was about to happen. Then, from one of the doors ahead, a figure emerged. It was tall and shrouded in shadows, its eyes glowing with a supernatural malice. "You shouldn't be here," the figure said, its voice reverberating with a force that made Jack's bones tremble. Jack drew his gun, pointing it at the figure. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" The figure laughed again, a laugh that seemed to come from every corner of the house. "I am the guardian of this place, and you will not leave here alive." Before Jack could react, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving only an echo of its laughter. The detective felt the weight of the threat, the certainty that whatever they were facing was much more powerful and dangerous than he'd imagined. "We need to be careful," he told Clara, trying to stay calm. "This place is full of traps and secrets, but we won't give up. We'll solve this." With renewed determination, Jack and Clara continued their exploration, aware that the mansion still had many secrets to reveal and dangers to face. The night was just beginning, and the mystery of the mansion on the hill was far from solved. Chapter 5. The Mysterious Ally. Night was deepening, and the mansion on the hill seemed even more threatening under the pale moonlight. Jack Sullivan and Clara Hayes felt the weight of the place's secrets, but knew they couldn't stop. They needed help, and quickly. Back at Jack's office, he frantically flipped through his contacts, searching for someone with knowledge of the supernatural. Clara, still visibly shaken, watched in silence, knowing they needed an expert. Then, he found the name he was looking for: Evelyn Thorne. Known in the underworld as a medium and occult specialist, Evelyn was their best option. Jack picked up the phone and dialed the number with steady fingers. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was soft, almost ethereal. "Evelyn, it's Jack Sullivan. I need your help with a case." There was a pause, and then the voice responded, "I'm listening." Jack quickly explained the events at the mansion, the trapped souls, and the dark figure that had confronted them. Evelyn listened in silence, her tone unchanging. "This is more serious than I thought," she finally said. "Meet me at my office in an hour." Jack hung up and turned to Clara. "Let's go. We have an ally." An hour later, they stood in front of Evelyn's office, a small esotericism shop in the oldest part of the city. The discreet facade hid the wealth of occult knowledge the woman possessed. They entered, the sound of bells announcing their arrival. Evelyn Thorne was an impressive figure. Tall, with long black hair and piercing blue eyes, she exuded an aura of mystery. Her clothes were simple, but bore mystical symbols embroidered with precision. She greeted them with an enigmatic smile. "Jack, Clara," she welcomed them. "Please, have a seat." As they settled in, Evelyn lit incense and candles, creating an atmosphere conducive to spiritual consultation. "Tell me everything, in detail," she said. Jack began to recount the events, from the moment Clara walked into his office to the confrontation at the mansion. Evelyn listened attentively, her eyes fixed on his, occasionally closing them to perceive something beyond the physical. When he finished, she took a deep breath. "What you encountered there is a powerful manifestation from the beyond. Trapped souls, ancient rituals, and a guardian entity. We must proceed with caution." Clara, who had been silent until then, asked, "What can we do? How can we free these souls?" Evelyn took an old book from a nearby shelf and opened it to a specific page. "There's a liberation ritual we can perform, but we'll need some ingredients and careful preparation. The Guardian won't let us interfere without resistance." Jack nodded. "What do we need?" Evelyn listed the items: black candles, specific herbs, a quartz crystal, and a protection symbol drawn with white chalk. "We'll also need courage and absolute concentration. One distraction and everything could go wrong." Clara looked at Jack, her eyes determined. "We're ready. We'll do whatever it takes." Evelyn smiled slightly. "Very well. Prepare yourselves, for tonight we'll face forces beyond our world." Soon after, armed with the necessary ingredients, the three returned to the mansion. The atmosphere felt even heavier, as if the place knew they were bringing a force that could change everything. In the entry hall, Evelyn began drawing the protection symbol on the floor while Jack and Clara prepared the candles and herbs. "Stay alert," Evelyn warned. "The Guardian might try to stop us." With each movement, the tension increased. Finally, with everything ready, Evelyn began chanting ancient words, a language that seemed to resonate with the mansion's very structure. Suddenly, the air turned icy, and the dark figure of the Guardian appeared again. "You're not permitted to be here," it growled, advancing. Jack stood between the Guardian and Evelyn, his gun drawn, though he knew ordinary bullets would be useless. "We won't back down." The figure advanced, but Evelyn continued the ritual, her voice gaining strength. Clara, beside Jack, held a candle, her eyes fixed on the entity. "Stay behind me," Jack said, trying to protect Clara from the worst. Then, an intense light emanated from the symbol on the floor, bathing the room in a purifying glow. The Guardian screamed, a sound of pure agony and rage, before vanishing in an explosion of shadows. The silence that followed was absolute. Evelyn opened her eyes, exhausted but triumphant. "The souls are free, but the work is not finished. We need to investigate further to ensure the evil doesn't return." Jack and Clara looked around, feeling the difference in the atmosphere. The mansion still had its secrets, but now they had a powerful ally by their side. The battle was far from over, but at least they had taken the first step. Chapter 6. Dark Revelations. With the Guardian banished and the souls freed, the atmosphere in the mansion was less oppressive, yet still shrouded in mystery. Jack Sullivan, Clara Hayes, and Evelyn Thorne felt that the mansion's history had much more to reveal. Determined to uncover the truth, they began to explore the mansion's darkest recesses, now with a renewed sense of hope. "Evelyn, you mentioned there's still work to be done," said Jack as they climbed a staircase leading to the second floor. "Where do we start?" Evelyn, still slightly breathless after the ritual, nodded. "We need to understand the origins of these rituals, who started them and why. The mansion's history will be our guide." Reaching the second floor, they were greeted by a long hallway lined with doors, each one leading to a new mystery. Jack chose a door at random and opened it, revealing a dusty library. Tall shelves filled with old books lined the walls. And in the center, a large wooden table was covered with yellowed papers and ancient documents. "Let's start here," said Jack, picking up a stack of papers. "There might be something that gives us a clue." Clara and Evelyn began sifting through the books, each one older and more mysterious than the last. After a few minutes, Clara found a dark, leather-bound book titled Chronicles of the Larkwood Mansion. "Jack, look at this," Clara called, handing him the book. "This might be exactly what we're looking for." Jack opened the book, smelling the scent of old paper. The pages were filled with accounts, drawings, and documents about the mansion's history and its former inhabitants. He began to read aloud. The Larkwood Mansion was built in the late 19th century by Baron Victor Larkwood, a man known for his inclinations towards the occult. It is said that he conducted dark rituals in search of immortality and power. Many disappeared under his roof, and the stories of horror accumulated over the years. Evelyn, attentive, added, "It seems the Baron himself might be the key to understanding what happened here. His quest for immortality likely led to these rituals." As they flipped through the pages, they discovered detailed drawings of rituals, mystical symbols, and eyewitness accounts of inexplicable events. There were also letters written by the Baron himself, describing his experiences and the terrible prices he paid for his knowledge. "Listen to this," said Jack, reading one letter in particular. "October 25th, 1895. I feel the weight of my sins upon me. The souls I have trapped here cry out for release, but I fear my own soul is destined for the same fate. The final ritual approaches, and with it, the promise of immortality, or eternal damnation." Clara looked at Evelyn, her eyes filled with concern. "That explains the trapped souls. He really did it out of selfishness and fear of death." Evelyn nodded. "But if he failed, his soul and those of others might still be trapped here. We need to find out what happened to him in the end." They continued to investigate, and then Jack found a map of the mansion with a highlighted section, a secret passage leading to an underground chamber. "I think we found our next destination," he said, showing the map to the two. "Whatever we find down there, we must be prepared," said Evelyn. "This might be the source of everything." Guided by the map, they descended to the basement again, finding the hidden passage behind a bookshelf. With effort, they opened the passage and were greeted by a narrow, damp corridor leading deeper into the mansion's bowels. At the end of the corridor, they found a massive wooden door, adorned with mystical symbols and rusty locks. Jack forced the door open, revealing a vast chamber illuminated only by the dim light of their flashlights. In the center was a stone altar, covered in symbols and ritual markings. "This is where it all began," said Evelyn, observing the altar with reverence and fear. "And perhaps where it can end." They approached the altar, examining the symbols and objects left there. Clara found a more recent diary with a leather cover and a lock that opened easily. "This diary seems to have belonged to the mansion's last inhabitant," she said, flipping through the pages. "It describes attempts to undo the Baron's rituals." Suddenly, a chilling presence filled the chamber, and a spectral figure appeared before them. It was Baron Victor Larkwood himself, his ghostly appearance and eyes filled with torment. "You have come to free me?" His voice was a whisper laden with despair. Evelyn stepped forward, the diary in her hands. "Baron Larkwood, we are here to undo the evil you caused and free all the souls, including yours." The Baron's ghost looked at her with a mix of hope and agony. "Then please, finish what I could not." Jack, Clara, and Evelyn knew they were at the heart of the mystery. The resolution was near, but there was still one final ritual to perform, a last confrontation with the forces haunting the mansion. They were prepared to face the challenge, knowing that the fate of many souls depended on their success. Chapter 7. The Supernatural Confrontation. The spectral presence of Baron Victor Larkwood hovered over the altar, his hollow eyes fixed on Jack, Clara, and Evelyn. The air in the subterranean chamber was thick, charged with energy accumulated over decades of dark rituals. Jack knew they were at the crucial point of their investigation, where every step could mean the salvation or damnation of many souls, including their own. Evelyn was frantically consulting the diary Clara had found, trying to decipher the ritual described in its final pages. "There's a way to undo what he did," she murmured. "But it's risky. We need to be precise. Any mistake could be fatal." Jack and Clara prepared the necessary ingredients for the ritual: black candles, sacred herbs, and a quartz crystal. Jack lit the candles with meticulous movements, while Clara spread the herbs in a circle around the altar. The Baron watched them, his tormented expression reflecting both fear and hope. "Are you ready?" asked Evelyn, her eyes fixed on the manuscript. Jack nodded. "Let's finish this." Evelyn began to chant the ancient words, her voice firm and authoritative. The chamber began to vibrate with intense energy, the candles flickering as if an unseen force were trying to extinguish them. Clara held the quartz crystal, channeling the ritual's energy. As Evelyn's chant grew stronger, the Baron's figure began to writhe, a silent scream escaping his lips. "What's happening?" shouted Jack, trying to stay calm. "He's resisting," replied Evelyn, her voice now louder. "The forces he invoked won't let him go easily." Suddenly the chamber was invaded by shadows, amorphous shapes that danced on the walls and seemed to try to break the protection circle. Jack pulled Clara closer, shielding her with his body. "Stay focused," he said, trying to calm his own mind. The shadows grew more aggressive, attacking the circle with renewed force. Evelyn intensified her chant, her words echoing through the chamber. "Ignis purificat animas vestras, liberate vinculus." The herb circle glowed with intense light, repelling the shadows. But then, a more defined figure emerged from the shadows, the same dark entity they had encountered before. Its eyes gleamed with supernatural malice, and its voice reverberated through the chamber. "You have no power here. I am the guardian, and these souls belong to me." Jack raised his gun, aware of its futility against such an entity. "We won't let you win," he declared. The entity laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You have no choice." Evelyn, sweating and visibly exhausted, maintained the chant. "Clara, hold the crystal higher," she shouted. Clara obeyed, and the crystal shone brightly, projecting a purifying light throughout the chamber. The entity screamed in pain, its form beginning to disintegrate under the light. "No!" it shrieked, its voice filled with despair and hatred. "Now, Jack!" yelled Evelyn. "Break the altar!" Without hesitation, Jack grabbed a rusty iron bar nearby and struck the altar with all his strength. The stone cracked, and a wave of energy exploded through the chamber, dissipating the shadows and the entity with a final agonizing scream. Silence returned, heavy and absolute. The Baron, now free of his spectral form, looked at them with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered before disappearing in a cloud of light. Evelyn collapsed to her knees, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," she said, panting. Clara hugged Jack, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We did it." Jack looked around the chamber, now devoid of any malevolent presence. "It's over," he said, helping Evelyn to her feet, "but we can't forget what happened here." They climbed back up to the mansion, the feeling of triumph mixed with the weight of what they had faced. Jack knew there was still much to uncover, but for now, they had won an important battle. As they stepped out into the cold night air, the mansion stood silent, its dark secrets slowly fading into history. The ordeal had changed them all, but it had also strengthened their resolve. They knew their journey wasn't over, but together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And so, with the night still heavy around them, they left the mansion, determined to uncover the remaining mysteries and ensure that the dark forces would never return. The battle had been won, but the war for the souls and the light was just beginning. Chapter 8. Unraveling the Mystery. The next morning brought a gentle, welcoming light, bathing the mansion in a clarity unseen for a long time. Jack Sullivan, Clara Hayes, and Evelyn Thorne were gathered in the library, surrounded by ancient books and documents unearthed the previous night. The battle with the guardian entity had been intense, but they knew there was still more to discover. Evelyn, with a cup of tea in her hands, was reviewing Baron Larkwood's diary. "We need to understand the origin of this entity, why it was created, and how it became so powerful," Jack agreed, leafing through a stack of old letters. The Baron mentioned something about a final ritual, something he hoped would grant him immortality, but it may have gone terribly wrong. Clara, examining the documents, found a rolled-up scroll. "Look at this," she said, carefully unrolling the paper. "It looks like a map of an underground complex beneath the mansion." Evelyn leaned in to examine the map. "This could be the key. There may be more chambers down there, each containing parts of the ritual the Baron tried to complete." Jack stood up, resolute. "We need to explore this complex. There could be more clues, or even other dangers we need to face." With the map in hand, they descended to the basement again, finding the secret passage leading to the underground complex. Following the map's directions, they navigated winding corridors and stone staircases, each step echoing in the ancient silence of the place. They arrived at a larger chamber, its walls covered in mystical symbols. In the center, there was a series of pedestals, each holding a different artifact. Evelyn approached cautiously, examining each artifact. "These must be the components of the Baron's final ritual." Clara pointed to a particular pedestal, where an ornate crown rested. "The crown of immortality," she murmured. "It's mentioned in the diary. The Baron believed that by wearing this crown, he would become immortal." Jack watched intently. "But something went wrong. The entity we faced may have been a consequence of that. He tried to master forces beyond his comprehension." Evelyn nodded. "We need to deactivate these artifacts. They could still be fueling the place's negative energy." As they began working to deactivate the artifacts, Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "Did you hear that?" Jack raised his flashlight, illuminating the corridor they had come from. "I didn't hear anything. What did you feel?" "I don't know," she replied, trembling. "A presence, like someone is watching us." Evelyn continued her work, focused. "Stay alert. Any disturbance could reactivate the ritual's energy." Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the candles and plunging them into darkness. Jack instinctively drew his gun, knowing it was useless against supernatural forces. "Show yourself," he demanded, his voice echoing off the stone walls. A figure began to materialize in the darkness, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. It was Baron Larkwood, but different from the specter they had encountered before. This one was more corporeal, more menacing. "You have no right to be here," the Baron growled, his voice laden with rage and pain. "This is my domain, my legacy." Evelyn stood up, holding one of the artifacts as a defense. "Baron Larkwood, you were a victim of your own ambition. Your ritual failed and condemned many souls. We are here to correct that." The Baron advanced, his presence dominating the chamber. "You cannot stop me. I am eternal." Clara held Jack's arm, her voice trembling. "What do we do now?" Jack squeezed her hand, trying to convey confidence. "Evelyn, what do we need to do to completely undo the ritual?" Evelyn, still holding the artifact, began chanting a new incantation she had found in the diary's pages. "We need to destroy the crown and the other artifacts. It's the only way to break the Baron's connection to this world." The Baron roared, advancing with more fury. "You will not dare!" In a swift move, Jack grabbed the crown and threw it to the ground, smashing it with his foot. The chamber trembled, a wave of energy pulsating through the walls. Evelyn continued her chant, her words gaining strength and intensity. Clara helped destroy the other artifacts, each one releasing a burst of light as it was shattered. The Baron screamed in agony, his form beginning to disintegrate. "No, this cannot happen." With the last artifact destroyed, the chamber was flooded with a brilliant light. The Baron let out a final scream before disappearing completely, his presence finally extinguished. Silence returned, and the soft light of the candles slowly illuminated the chamber once more. Evelyn, exhausted but victorious, smiled at Jack and Clara. "We did it. The ritual is undone." Jack took a deep breath, relieved. There's still much to uncover, but at least the worst is over. Clara looked around, feeling the peace now permeating the place. The souls are free. Finally. They climbed back up to the mansion, the weight of the events still fresh in their minds. They knew the investigation continued, but for now, they had won a crucial battle against the forces of darkness. As they stepped out into the cold morning air, the mansion stood silent, its dark secrets slowly fading into history. The ordeal had changed them all, but it had also strengthened their resolve. They knew their journey wasn't over, but together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And so, with the new day dawning, they left the mansion, determined to uncover the remaining mysteries and ensure that the dark forces would never return. The battle had been won, but the war for the souls and the light was just beginning. Chapter 9. The Climax. The Larkwood mansion was quieter than ever, as if holding its breath after the recent confrontation. Jack Sullivan, Clara Hayes, and Evelyn Thorne felt the weight of victory, but they also knew their work wasn't completely finished. The energy of the place had changed, but there was a persistent sense of something left undone. As they descended once more into the subterranean chamber, Jack led the way with a flashlight, its beam swaying on the stone walls. "Evelyn, what else do we need to do?" he asked, keeping his voice low as if fearing to awaken something. "We need to ensure the connection between the world of the living and the dead is completely sealed," she replied, flipping through the Baron's diary. "The final step is a closing ritual, to purify the ground and ensure no negative energy remains." The chamber was silent, except for the echo of their footsteps. Jack and Clara prepared the altar, following Evelyn's detailed instructions. The remains of the destroyed artifacts still lay on the ground, a reminder of the battle they had fought. Evelyn began drawing a new circle on the ground with white chalk, murmuring ancient words and infusing the circle with protective power. Clara lit the candles around the perimeter, and Jack ensured everyone was inside the circle before Evelyn initiated the final chant. "Elements of earth, air, fire, and water," she began, her voice resonating off the chamber walls. "We call upon your presence to purify this place. Let the forces of evil be banished, and the tormented souls find peace." As Evelyn chanted, the chamber began to glow with a soft light. Positive energy seemed to grow, pushing out any remnants of darkness. Jack could feel the power in her words, a force that seemed to restore the natural order of the place. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the chamber, a final gasp from the mansion. From the floor, a shadow rose, the last manifestation of Baron Larkwood. His form was weaker, almost translucent, but the rage in his eyes was unmistakable. "You cannot defeat me!" he shouted, advancing toward the circle. Jack positioned himself between the shadow and Evelyn, ready to protect the medium. "Your fight is over, Baron. Accept your fate." Evelyn continued the chant, without hesitation. The light within the circle intensified, creating a barrier the shadow couldn't penetrate. "Forces of light, purify this place," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Bathe it in your purity and expel the darkness forever." The Baron's shadow roared, a mix of despair and fury, before being consumed by the light. His final scream echoed through the chamber, the lament of a condemned soul, before vanishing completely. The ensuing silence was absolute. The chamber seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as if finally freed from a tremendous burden. Evelyn finished the chant, her words now a soft whisper. "It is done. The evil is banished." Clara let out a sigh of relief, tears streaming down her face. "We did it, Jack. We really did it." Jack nodded, embracing her. "Yes, we did. Thanks to Evelyn." Evelyn, exhausted but satisfied, smiled. It was a joint effort. Now the mansion can finally find peace. They ascended back to the surface, the daylight filtering through the mansion's dirty windows. The place now seemed lighter, more tranquil. The oppressive presence was gone, replaced by a sense of serenity. As they prepared to leave, Jack looked at the mansion one last time. "There's so much more to discover in the world," he said thoughtfully. "But this place, it's finally at rest." Clara held his hand, her eyes reflecting renewed determination. "And so are we, Jack. We're ready for whatever comes next." Evelyn closed the mansion's door, sealing the past with a sigh of relief. "The night still holds many secrets," she said, looking at the two. "But now we know we can face them together." The trio walked away from the mansion, leaving behind a place that had been the stage of many horrors, but now began a new chapter. The shadows had been banished, and with them, the promise of a brighter future. Chapter 10. Resolution and Reflection. The morning light illuminated the mansion, revealing its scars and its melancholic beauty. Jack Sullivan, Clara Hayes, and Evelyn Thorne stood at the entrance, feeling the weight of the recent events. The air was lighter, almost fresh, a clear difference from the oppressive atmosphere that had dominated the place for so long. "We can finally leave this place in peace," said Jack, observing the mansion with a mix of relief and melancholy. Clara smiled, though her eyes still carried the memory of the horrors they had faced. "Yes, but we must not forget what happened here. There is much to learn from these experiences." Evelyn, always serene, nodded. "The world is full of mysteries and dangers beyond our understanding. The important thing is to face these challenges with courage and determination." As they walked back to the city, Jack reflected on the journey. The case of the Larkwood Mansion had been one of the most challenging of his career, but also one of the most rewarding. He felt a change within himself, a new understanding of the forces that operate beyond the physical world. Arriving at his office, Jack sat in his familiar chair, observing the surroundings with new eyes. The files and photos of old cases now seemed less intimidating, more manageable. He took a cigarette, lit it, and blew out the smoke, feeling more at peace than ever. Clara approached, sitting in the chair opposite Jack's desk. "So what now, Jack? What comes next?" Jack smiled, his expression softer. "Now, we keep doing what we do best, solving mysteries, helping those in need, and facing the unknown with courage." Evelyn entered the office, carrying an old book. "We need to continue studying and understanding these phenomena. There's much more out there, and the better prepared we are, the better we can face what's to come." Jack agreed, taking the book Evelyn offered. "You're right. This was just a chapter in a much larger story, and I'm ready for the next one." As he flipped through the book, he found references to other haunted places, ancient rituals, and supernatural entities. Each page was a window to a new mystery, a new challenge. Clara looked out the window, watching the bustling city below. "You know, Jack, I think we're just getting started. There's so much to discover, so much to understand." Jack stood up, walking to the window beside Clara. "And we'll do it together, because that's what we do. We face the unknown, uncover the truth, and bring peace where there's chaos." Evelyn smiled, feeling a deep connection with her new friends, and in doing so, we also find our own peace. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the city, Jack, Clara, and Evelyn felt ready for whatever the future held. They had faced the darkness and won, and now they were ready to illuminate the mysteries yet to come. Night fell softly, and the city lights began to shine. Jack, Clara, and Evelyn left the office, walking through the illuminated streets, ready to face any challenge that came their way. The story of the Larkwood Mansion had ended, but their journey was just beginning. Jack paused for a moment, looking at the horizon. "Let's make a promise," he said, looking at Clara and Evelyn. "We promise to always seek the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it may be." Clara and Evelyn nodded, joining Jack in a silent pact. And so, together, they walked towards the unknown, ready to face any mystery the future held.